caregivers or parents or grandparents or extended family that are not, all of them should be able to educate their children in the way that best fits that child. Because of what reason? We know that long-term life outcomes are connected to K-12 experience, and I'm a big proponent of being able to give people a chance.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Polaris Connection, your podcast that connects parents of autistic children with industry experts and with proven results. I am your host, Brad Broyles, and I'm here with my amazing co-host, Nathan Palmer.
Brad, good morning. Happy to be here as always.
Awesome. Well, today, folks, we have a fantastic guest. I've been excited for this for a long time, Nathan. It's going to be amazing. So we have here George Khalaf, who is the managing partner at First Day. Welcome, George, to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Hey, you've been a big fan of mine ever since we met early days when we were building Polaris.
Yeah. The moment I walked in the building was beyond impressed with what you all have been able to do. And now to see in very short time, I don't know that was even a year ago, but the amount of growth and the amount of need that I know and that I'm aware of that is in the state of Arizona, it's just tremendous what you all have been able to do, especially in an area where I grew up. I grew up in the Mesa, Chandler, Gilbert area. I went to Mesa Public Schools. So it's been really cool to see that happen.
Yeah, it's like we put up this sign not knowing who was out there and we got hit by a freight train and we are just struggling to hold on and enjoy the ride. It's been surreal.
Well, it was nice the first time I met you, George. Is like, we were in the thick of everything. We needed some help with ESA. We held up a sign, and all of a sudden, George just showed up in our lives. It was amazing.
Along with everybody else. George, I'll say the advocacy and support for this cause has been unreal, and it's a testament, I think, to just people understanding that there is this population out there that just has different needs. And I joke all the time on the show, I was thrown into the world of autism. All of those that are out there advocating and supporting this cause and willing to jump in voluntarily just speaks to the character of those people we have around us. So you speak to that world, and I appreciate all that you've done to help.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a line that I use every time I speak about sort of what I like to call educational freedom, school choice. And I say parents should be able to educate their children in the way that they best see fit, and that is not more true. There's no group of kiddos that is more true for than our kiddos with neurodiversity, or kiddos that are that have autism, and there are a lot of things that need to be done, and Polaris does a really good job of that.
Thanks. Brad, I don't mean to take a quick aside because I know you usually do a background, but
he has an awesome background too.
All right. I need to just throw something out there because he hit a phrase and like my mind is buzzing and I cannot let it go and I don't want to lose it. Is that okay?
Stepping on my toes? Never.
Never. Listen, you said something and it's something that goes around a lot and it's kind of a buzzword, school choice.
Yes.
And that is traditionally implied as a parent's choice and how they want to educate their children. But it's funny, George, you said that and I took it completely opposite. For me, school choice wasn't, what options do I have for my son? We started this Polaris Academy journey because my son is on the autism spectrum. And it wasn't so much that I wanted options for him. Even looking at my options, George, I couldn't find a good option for him. So it wasn't about me having choice. It was that I could create a school that had choices that the other schools I was looking at weren't utilizing. And so for me, school choice was less about parent choosing and about intentionally changing how we educate. The ESA allowed us to create this special needs school, blending therapies and academics in a way that a public or a charter cannot. The regulation system in place and the federal systems in place weren't designed for this subpopulation, and it's not their fault. General education is charged with teaching everybody across any background, across any need, and just saying solve all the world's educational problems. Like their creed is we educate everybody. And you take any company out there and say, hey, your business charge is to solve all problems across all areas of your field.
And they'll never work.
They're going to fail, right? And so they're either going to be really good at some things, but they will always fail in some area. And I saw school choice not as I want to choose another one. I wanted to create a different school option that the standard system wouldn't allow. So for me, school choice is less about the parent option and was more about educational freedom and delivering something that could not be done at the public level.
Spoken like a true entrepreneur. a father who needed a better way to serve their child. And this is what I love about school choice. Look, I am a massive school choice advocate. I spend most of my days proclaiming this from the rooftops, and I'm willing to take arrows for it and advocate in any space. But part of what I love about school choice is that when the door was like kicked open a little bit in Arizona, and we are the pioneers 20 years ago. We were the first ones that allowed, school choice also, by the way, is like open enrollment. So people moving between different district schools. So there's the most basic of school choice. And then there's what we have here in Arizona, which is like the premier. When we just creaked that door open, we weren't even sure of all of the potential. And one of these potential is there's this entire, I'm going to geek out a little bit, the supply side commentary, which is providers like you all that are providing services would never be able to access markets without these types of programs. There's no other regulatory framework to build them from as complicated, I don't want to say it's complicated, but more complicated from a school that provides services that's like in person. There's a lot there to lift, to a lot of online providers that are coming in from out of state that are serving people in different places. And how could that not be the best thing for children? Because we know that not every child is the same. Even if you didn't have a sort of unique need and weren't neurodiverse, but especially in this instance. And so, no, I agree. You are right. When I say school choice, I think about parents having a choice, but there is an aspect of it. It's no good. Anyone who knows, right, economics, supply and demand, it doesn't work if there's not supply. And I will tell you, in Arizona, we have been struggling to keep up because the demand is so great. We have so many options. We have 101,000 children on this program now, almost 10% of all children in Arizona. Wow. And we still do not. And there's so much more demand, even for people that are not on an empowerment scholarship account, especially in the autism space. So much demand, so much need. That one is maybe less appropriate to use the word demand. So much need. And the ESA, I firmly believe, helps unlock it.
Well, to your point, Nathan, and that was really good what you said, George. It's like it allows companies like us to do what is best for the kiddos, that we're not locked into a box. ESA has given us that flexibility, which is really, really neat. And now we're able to perform at a very high level for these kiddos. Love it, man.
Yeah. So now I guess we should go back to where we were and qualify why is George here to comment on this stuff.
He actually has an awesome background, like that, for the public to know. So with an extensive background in public policy and public relations, George leveraged his skills to help companies of various types in education create a strong, cohesive message and market themselves with powerful branding, So how many schools have you worked with, or different organizations?
Countless schools, a lot. We do a lot with, what I like to say is this: our company serves organizations in schools that serve families that almost exclusively or partially educate their children from home or are in the neurodiverse space. We have found ourselves doing quite a bit of work there, a lot of online, a lot of in person. Look, you all didn't have an issue when, as you joked, I think you put up the sign and people came. So you didn't have an issue. It was not a marketing question for you. It was more a management of the school question and how can we scale? That's not always the case because for whatever reason, and usually outside of the autism space, like there's so much competition, and so people can't really discern what's the best option, and so we exist to help them. But before we even got there, we needed to help unlock these programs, and so we've helped pass school choice programs around the country. And just quickly on my background, I was born in Lebanon in the Middle East, Lebanese Christian, legally immigrated here in the mid 90s. And I'm passionate about educational options. I'm passionate about school choice, not necessarily because I needed something special growing up or because I had that. My parents literally had no idea that, they thought that there was just private schools and you paid a bunch of money to send your kids there. They didn't know that charter schools existed. We open enrolled. That was the extent of my experience. We just didn't grow up with much. And I had a great experience. I really cannot complain about my experience. I went to Mesa Public Schools, but we know that that's not the case for every child. And look, I'm a big proponent, even as I say this, I start getting goosebumps. Like the word fairness means a lot to me because when, I had tremendous opportunities in my life and I want to be able to unlock that for other children. That means a lot to me, whether that was for me in K-12, whether that was for me in college. And so I've spent my career in public policy, in politics, advocating for children, advocating for parents, advocating for laws like this that allow folks like you all to do these tremendous things, right? Because it all has to work together. You all have to be willing to step up to serve the need. And often the story, and that's why I love meeting founders, the story started with my child face this struggle. I needed something for them. This is why I stepped up. If you remember, that was the first thing I asked you when we met, when I was touring the school, when you all were still in your early days, because I love hearing that why story, because the why is what gets me out of bed in the morning, and the why is what we help founders unlock with the work that we do at First Day. But look, I'm a political and policy junkie, and so I do a disproportionate amount of time, at least me personally from a partner perspective, in helping change laws that make it better for families and
if you don't mind me ask, I want to dig a little deeper. What is the why that you have? Like, you're such an advocate for school choice. You're such an advocate for parents. You're such an advocate for these kids. You know, you have a very unique background. What was it specifically in your background that you're like, you know what, this was the moment that, hey, this is the road that I'm going to go after?
I don't think that every setting works for every child. And, as I mentioned, I am a Christian, and so I think that we're all made uniquely by God, and so with that, children are very special. I've always loved children. I was one of those guys, teenagers that would babysit kids in the neighborhood, which is not often the case. I had kids very young. I've got 3 boys now. 2 of them are old enough to be in school and use the Empowerment Scholarship account. But I'm a big proponent and advocate, and my why is, parents are the ones that know their children best. You know your child better than anyone else knows their child, right, Nathan? And right. You knew what they needed, and you knew that the option wasn't out there, and so you built it. You had that capacity. But what happens to the parent that does not have that capacity? That parent is who touches my heart. And the conversations that I've had with parents that are that are in what you would explain as a quote unquote, even though there's nothing that's, there's no typical situations, but typical situation to caregivers or parents or grandparents or extended family that are not, all of them should be able to educate their children in the way that best fits that child. Because of what reason? We know that long-term life outcomes are connected to K-12 experience. And I'm a big proponent of being able to give people a chance. And that it shouldn't be that you're neurodiverse, you're on the autism spectrum, that you should have less opportunity. You should have every single opportunity afforded to you that's afforded to everyone else. And I'm a big proponent of that. And we have seen tremendous success in that space if they're in the right settings.
Yeah,
that's the bottom line.
And what's nice about you, George, is that you're able to kind of help push legislation for the Empowerment Scholarship account here in Arizona, but also nationwide. Tell us a little bit about your work nationwide. That's pretty awesome.
We helped pass the law very, very closely in Utah. And we were very proud of it. From members of my team, we actually named the scholarship. It's called the Utah Fits All Scholarship. We came up with that name, and then they adopted it. Members of the legislature adopted it. And so much of the branding and the work that's been done there, very proud of that. And look, as someone who's spent their career in public policy and politics, and I'm sure you all and your listeners will agree, politics is not always the thing people think of when they think of efficiency. They think of people doing good things and things that are honorable, right? I mean, unfortunately, there's a reputation. I detest that reputation, because there is a lot of good that can come if you have fair actors that are working on it. And for me, part of what politics means is that we get to do things like this, because there are now in Utah, the program's still a little bit smaller, 15,000 children that have options in Utah that didn't have options before. And that our firm could have played a small part in that is just so, that's what gets me out of bed in the morning. That's what continues to allow me to drive in the face of all of the problems that we face. This week has been a particularly rough one, but what keeps me going is that advocacy. And we've worked in states around the country, and sometimes we've failed. I mean, there's a couple states that we've worked in where they lost their programs, or we were defeated, even though the vast majority of voters around the country support options for parents. That does not always translate into political will to get those done. I mean, there's a massive disconnect. And so, we've had some failures, but that does not mean we don't stop trying.
Well, and it's why I appreciate this exercise of talking about the purpose and the story behind it. Oftentimes in politics, I think the sour note we get, and I'm stepping into my role as just a constituent, right, is it seems to be whoever yells louder and has the voice that reaches farther wins the day. And it shouldn't be that just the more widespread argument is the one that wins. It should be the one that's delved in most deeply, that people are making informed decisions. So just being able to get information out there to show here's maybe another side of this program or another intent behind this push I think helps to educate, and that's our goal, right? Is to educate not just our kids, but educate the community and make sure we're really looking out for best interest, not just special interest.
Yeah. Yeah. So my one political public service announcement of the day is this. As someone who's been in this space for a long time, and I've seen its ups and I've seen its downs, I would just encourage anybody who's listening, as frustrating as it may seem, as inaccessible as it may feel often, those in elective office, many of them are looking to talk to people and hear the experiences, and they will learn from you. So as parents, I know everyone's busy, and I can only imagine what's on the plate of a parent that has one child, that has multiple children. They're trying to figure out how to educate them on the spectrum. They have a recent diagnosis, whatever the situation may be. Use your voice. Your voice is powerful, and I would just urge you that you lean in, because when you don't, I have a saying, someone's going to have the power. Someone's going to be in the ear. It's either going to be you with your story, with the narrative, with the truth, with the other side, giving a perspective, or it's going to be someone who probably does not have the best interest of the person they're talking to. They have some other ulterior motive. So someone's going to have it. And so it's usually left to those that have more money to make from it or that have more time on their hands. And so I would just urge parents, even in this season of life, speaking with someone who has 3 children, even in this season of life, that we lean in and that we engage. And I also, that's another sort of passion of mine, is helping people connect and sharing those stories. That's why I love doing like marketing and connecting marketing with public policy, is those stories. Stories are powerful. And the people that speak from the heart and speak to other hearts are the things that prevail. If you're speaking from the head or to the head, or you're speaking numbers, like, I like to joke, no offense to any accountants or actuaries that are that are listening, that's just not what compels people to move. Stories compel people to act. And so I just wanted to say that because I'm super passionate about this, and your voice is needed.
Well, so then how do parents, that feel like they're just another number? As you mentioned, we have over 100,000 parents or, accounts with ESA right now. They do feel lost. Like we talk to them all the time. Yeah. Like if I'm a parent and I feel lost and I feel like I'm unheard, you're saying, okay, well, speak up, embrace it. How's the best way to do that?
So I am going to give a little shout out to actually one of the reasons, because 2 people independently had introduced me to you, Brad. One of them was Jenny Clark, and we, without even 100% knowing, she was coming in for a tour. I think a couple of days either before or after I came in for my tour. So I chair the board of her organization, Love Your School. So it's a shameless plug, and I helped her sort of launch it when she was first getting started. Love Your School does a tremendous amount of work in connecting parents with public policy. I mean, first and foremost, they exist to help parents solve problems, right? And I know that you all have worked with them for some of your families and kiddos at Polaris. But one of the additional things is that Love Your School does help mobilize parents. They do help amplify the parent voice, because at the end of the day, unfortunately, opponents or folks, I should say it this way, folks that do not want to see these options, which we can get into, they are very mobilized. They have very put together. There's a lot of interest in them pushing that narrative. And so there are organizations like Love Your Schools and others like them that allow you, one, to come down to the state capitol and speak up. And there is tremendous need for that. And again, I know that may be scary for some folks, but that's fine. You don't have to go to that level. You could lend your name. You cannot imagine how powerful it is for someone to say, look, member X in this district, we have 500 families from your district that are saying, please, stand with us. But some of the times, honestly, what I love to see is legislators come and tour schools and tour different environments. You can imagine how busy and how focused people are on other stuff, even for me. And I'm an advocate in this space. And when I toured your campus, I tour other campuses all the time. I'm amazed, or I hear about other products out there or services. I'm amazed at what people are coming up with. It makes it real, right? It personalizes it. We are desensitized. In the United States of America, politics is a game of desensitization, meaning that everything is important all at once, which can't be true. And we are inundated with information because of social media and otherwise. And so organizations like Love Your School help you cut through that noise. And frankly, there is a little bit of pressure. I'll put both of you guys on the spot for schools to lean in as well and to help speak with families like, look, this is what we're facing as a school. This is what could be coming down the horizon. We need your help. And I do think schools are waking up a little bit more to that. But for a while, Arizona, we were just existing. Our program was growing. Things were just good. There was no what I'd call political pressure. That's obviously not the case in the last 3 years. And so we have had and seen schools thankfully step up and and frankly, even something like this, having this dialogue on this podcast is a big deal too.
Well, and that's why we wanted to have you on. So you're encouraging, hey, parents, if you're not feeling heard, if you feel like you're kind of in a fishbowl, join organizations, kind of like Love Your School. That's a good way, rather than just going on social media and just like complaining about life all the time.
I think what I'm hearing is just use your voice however you can.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah,
and that's kind of, a lot of times we'll end these podcasts with advice for our parents. And I think we jumped in a little early, but yeah, it's parents, you have a voice. And because I can tell you there's a lot of trepidation out there seeing these pushes to, hey, end ESA or stop ESA. And I know there's nuance there, right? But our space with these special needs parents, where they genuinely need a different approach to education, right? They see that and it's scary.
Of course.
And so to be empowered to know, one, you have a voice, two, there are advocates out there to help you share your voice, and three, even if there are not, you have access to free social media or anything else to just promote your voice. Use it. Yeah. And so the message I'm hearing from you is speak up. Like we may not all have resources to accomplish these what if ambitions, but we all have a voice.
100%. And always also remember that there's a parent somewhere that was you 5 years before the you where you are today, that is confused, that doesn't know what option their child has, and is just scared because they probably are either just pre-diagnosis or immediately after, right? Remember that time. Remember the feeling that you had. Remember the voice that you now have. Remember the picture that you can paint for them, that there is another side to this, that you have found options that allow you to do. And then often, even if it doesn't connect to public policy, by the way, this isn't just about moving public policy. This is about just using your voice. There's someone that needs to hear it. I'm also a big believer in speaking things that have happened in my life, and you never know what someone else is facing. You never know what someone else is struggling with. And so even speaking up, it's amazing the doors that have been open. And I've started doing this over the last year and a half for sort of other reasons that aren't relevant to this podcast this morning. But I think it's important for that, not just public policy, but just speaking to other parents, because there's encouragement that we can give one another, right? Being a parent is scary no matter what, let alone if you're facing, right? And scary is a real, we're all laughing, we're all parents. We need to encourage one another, and social media, I'll end on this, at least for this part. Social media, I think rightfully so, gets a bad rap, and we're trying to manage it for our children and what to happen in society. And I think there's a lot of, frankly, negatives that have come from it in the way that how quickly information can move, especially now in the world of AI, that's incorrect. But there's also deep power that we have never been more connected to one another. And we should try to, since we have it, it's never going away. We should use it for its positive, which is this connectivity. Sure. And so I'm a big proponent, and that's how we see a lot of sort of special needs neurodiverse families that come together and connect online, because how else would you do that from around the country?
Yeah. Well, that's why we call it the Polaris connection. Yeah. The whole idea is to connect with ideas, with options, with purpose, with people, with just common interests, with potential.
Well, like we always want to be a beacon of hope, right? And just let parents know you are not alone. Like we are all in this together. You don't feel like you're doing this by yourself. Like we wanted to connect good resources and good people, so people are like, hey, you know what? I have a path moving forward. What would you say is our biggest challenges with special need families in the state of Arizona, navigating the whole education options and everything that's out there? I
mean, look, the bottom line, and I know you guys have gotten deep sort of on this with other guests as well, but the bottom line, the program is not, I don't want to say it's overly complicated, but it's not super simple. It's not like you just show up one day, you raise your hand, you're like, hey, I want to access this, and then you just get it. There's some hoops that we have to jump through. There's the IEP, the individualized educational plan that has to come to fruition. But there were more hoops that you had to jump through 4 or 5 years ago. We have thankfully removed those hoops. So when Arizona went what we call universal, which means that every child had access to an empowerment scholarship account, then some of those hoops went away. But before, you had to prior enroll in a public school for 100 days. So imagine coming to Polaris and being like, hey, I want to come to school here. But then you tell them, well, okay, yes, awesome. Wait, we love you. We'll see you in 100 days. Well, what do you mean? Well, to get the ESA, once you've already gone through the entire process of having to take your kiddo to get evaluated and everything, then you have to go to a school and get enrolled for 100 days, and then you have to come back. Imagine how ludicrous that is. And so that's still something that, by the way, is like still technically hanging over us from a state statute perspective, but we've been able to get around it because of the universal, expansion. Mm-hmm. So that's one of it. But the program in general, there's a lot of hoops that you have to jump through, and not everyone is willing to play ball. I don't want to call anyone out, but there's not every institution of education in the state of Arizona is willing to be a team player as much as some are. We have some amazing ones that have embraced the, I'd say competition or empowerment scholarship accounts. I'm talking about sort of public district schools, mm-hmm. and some not only have they not embraced, it's open warfare for anyone, or they just make life difficult for parents that are trying to get their children another option. And so I would say those are some of the, I know, like big picture, yes, big picture. And then in general, there is now an existential threat for the Empowerment Scholarship Account program overall, with a ballot measure that was filed in Arizona. For just a quick, to not get too into the weeds and nerd out, Arizona has an ability for citizens to collect petitions and put anything they want in front of the voters. That's something that the framers of the state constitution provided, because that was the time and place when Arizona became a state. That was really a fun thing to do.
We are the Wild West of policy for a reason.
Yeah, we're the Wild West period. And so, the cowboy mentality extended to this. And so there's a couple of organizations that have come together and are collecting. They need to collect a minimum of 250,000 signatures, which is a big number, which realistically means you have to collect 350 to 400,000 to, for them to have a cushion. That would tremendously affect the ESA program, and I believe destroy it. And so I am proudly helping lead the effort to push back against that. The jury's a little out on exactly how it would or would not affect special needs families or people that were in the pre-universal categories. Mm-hmm. But it would affect the program overall. And anytime there's disruption, you all know from a business perspective, do you like disruption or do you hate disruption? Sometimes disruption is good in the sense of if you're trying to innovate. But when you're talking about public policy or government, you don't want the government to be causing the disruption. And so that's now hanging over our heads, and will be for this year's until we figure out, does it make the ballot? And then if it does it pass? And so we won't know until first deadline is July 2nd for them to submit signatures, and then about 30 to 45 days worth of legal fighting. And then if it does pass through all those junctures, it would be on the ballot in November.
So that's something that, because we get asked a lot from parents, so that push, we would know kind of by July, August, if it's actually going to become a measure. And then if and so it is, that would be this fall that we would be voting on that measure as well.
Yeah. Okay. We'll know usually by about the second, third week of August, if it will make it, if it won't make it, for sure. And then if it does make it, it would be this election with everything else that we have going on in the state politically.
What are some misunderstandings that you think that if they would know better, they wouldn't push the initiative so hard?
So look, the big thing that we fight about is, and it's gotten headlines, so I'll go there. It's not like it's a state secret. There are families that have attempted, or individuals, sometimes they don't even have children because it is just true fraud, that have attempted to use these dollars for things that are inappropriate. And that's not okay. Any amount of fraud is bad, period, hard stop. And that's not just something that I say, that's something that every proponent of school choice would say. But where the gray area, and also we'll go here, that people debate about is, should people be buying materials for chicken coops with their ESA dollars? I like to use that as a good example.
Sure.
Right? We also know that families with an IEP have a lot of things written in their IEP that allows them to use it. And so sometimes there's even debates, though, about, is this the best version of that? So if you say, you have in your IEP, I'm just going to give a random example, it's probably not an IEP, a scooter. Do you need the most expensive one, or do you need the middling one, or do you need the cheapest one, right? And how do you govern that? And so it's
almost like they want to become insurance companies to tell the doctor how they want to, work
exactly.
with their patients.
So there is debate there. I will say this: I believe that the program has tremendous accountability built into it, and the reason why we know these bad purchases were attempted and happened, and the money was clawed back, is because we have the processes in place. But there's more to kind of unpack there that we can do at a later time. The other thing is, I don't know if it's a misnomer or not. There's just sometimes in life I have learned as I've gotten older that some folks, we just have ideological differences and disagreements, and so some people just believe that children, we shouldn't have a system outside of these systems. And
sure.
maybe for kiddos with neurodiversity, kiddos, with autism, maybe they should have another option, like literally maybe, but I'm not sure if the government should pay for it. But we really think that this system can serve them best. And there are just ideological differences. And I disagree with that, obviously. I don't think that those individuals, most of them are fair actors. Some of them are not. Again, sure. Not naming names. But that is another, I don't know if it's a misnomer or not though, Brad, but there are some people that have differences. They just don't think ideologically that this is something that should be allowed.
Well, we see that a lot on our side. And, I've anybody that knows my story, I support all forms of education. I don't have any complaints about my time and experience with public education, private, homeschool. All of them had their pros and their cons. And one thing that I've learned universally, politics aside, the individuals that throw themselves into the world of education have some of the biggest hearts I've ever seen.
100%.
And they're cause and purpose-driven people. And I think that's why the voices are so loud and strong, because these are people with purpose. And so that I champion no matter what. There's a couple aspects, and Brad, I don't know what order we get into it, but just for awareness that I kind of wanted to help shine a light on that maybe we don't consider as much. We're kind of unique as a private school because we've stumbled into this space, and I think it's kind of a first for Arizona, where we've had this collaboration with public school districts in a way that we never foresaw and that only ESA would have allowed. So a lot of headlines are going out there about like school closures and things shutting down. Causes aside, because there's a lot that plays into that between management of funds and budgeting and just allocation. And across the board, I don't want to limit it to just one thing or the other. But an opportunity arose where we, because of how fast we're growing, the private space is hard. Developing space and giving kids a traditional school experience on private land is hard, because as private property owners, we maximize space for buildings, we minimize open space. And so finding a field to do a sports program is hard.
Yes.
So we began dialogue with Mesa Public Schools. And initially, it was very standoffish. Like, it was purely a financial discussion of, there's a campus we don't want to close. Let's see if we can lease it out to somebody that's not competition. But public buildings, they still have to meet certain criteria. Educational is one of them. So it's like, no matter how you dice it, they were going to be inviting competition. And then along came Polaris. And the more we talked, the more we kind of decided we're not competition. We are.
Well, if I can go back to that first meeting, it was really neat, because it was like, at first they looked at us as competition. A big shout out to Mesa Public Schools.
100%.
Like, they were, talk about being visionaries, talk about thinking ahead. At first there was that big pushback, just because we were a private school. But then they realized the value of the collaboration, and we saw it too. So big shout out to Mesa Public Schools.
Yeah, and so this dialogue ensued, George, where we said, yes, we are ESA. We are, in the public's eyes, sometimes the big bad wolf of private education. Correct. But in reality, when they saw what we were doing and we talked about the programs, because of how they ran their special needs programs, they kind of let us know special needs was a lost option for them. It was costing them money to service kids with the needs that we were serving. And so we became a solution to help them resolve not just a problem, but to educate a subset of the population that they were not able to hyper-focus on. Because, again, their charge is educate everybody.
They have tons of kids they have to work with.
So, Mesa Public Schools, just to get political for a second, they had attempted a bond override last year for several $1 million for capital improvements and structure and all sorts of other things, and it did not pass. And that would have costed voters money, and it would have required some input. Well, our lease structure with Mesa Public Schools is going to return to them more than what the bond override was. And it doesn't cost taxpayers anything, and it didn't require a bond or a voter initiative. It's from a private source, right, that's using indirectly ESA funds that's coming right back into the public school system. It gives more choices for kids that need it. And the bigger story, it's on campuses that they were considering closing. But now we're able to go co-utilize these spaces. We're able to infuse new capital into remodeling them and bringing them up to speed, and then creating ongoing revenue and cash flow to keep these open, to keep revenue safe, to keep neighborhoods safe. And so there's this second dialogue out there of a way that we can be collaborative with school districts and use this as a protective mechanism. So I wanted to just throw that out there because it's something that I didn't even foreshadow a year ago.
Yeah. Well, it's when you start a new business, you don't know what's going to happen the next 2 to 3 years. And all of a sudden this opportunity came up and we were able to make these connections. And again, it's exciting to see what is able to come through this private-public partnership.
Yeah. And look, Mesa Public Schools have been and has been one of the main districts that have embraced ESAs. And they actually offer for any child class options, and they have a price sheet, and you can use your ESA dollars for them. Again, I will say not every district is nearly as hospitable, so they do get a well-deserved shout out. But we also in Arizona, there's lots of reports on this, by the way. We have a significantly high, I think maybe more so than anywhere in the country, but definitely more so than we've ever had in the history of our state, per student building like square footage that's available in schools. For schools that have closed long before that we're talking about them now, and that doesn't even factor in those that are coming down the pike. And there are some that are playing ball and some that are not. And so that is actually an example of a bill that's moving through the state legislature and has for a number of years on essentially like forcing through some mechanisms that if a school district has, so it has like building space, like they have to be willing to like lease it, because not everyone is having these conversations that you all are having, unfortunately, that are positive, like what we're having in Mesa. And so we'll see how that goes. But that is the beauty of this, because look, at the end of the day as well, you all are set up to be able to be entrepreneurial and nimble and provide different services. In its design, unfortunately, the public education system is not designed to be quick moving, right? Nobody thinks government or thinks public education and thinks quick. Now, that's not a bad thing. It's not a good thing. That's just a reality of the dynamic. But you all can think outside the box, and you're serving a specific population. You're not having to serve, and as we expect, you're serving everybody that's in an area, and then you're finding a way to serving kiddos with special needs. So I think it's great. I love getting stories like that out there, because it's also important to highlight stories in circumstances that are not often positive, but have turned very positive, that you all have been able to really build that partnership. And so Sure. Kudos to both sides, though, because you all needed to come in with a compelling sort of story and narrative and a business model that made sense, and they needed to be willing to accept it. So both sides.
Yeah, and if I get, Brad, I don't want to interject, but there's a second part of that I would love to get your thoughts on, George, and it's one that has bothered me for a couple of years. So, and a lot of parents don't even know about these, but there's this other mechanism out there called an STO, or a school tuition organization.
Yes.
These are those that a lot of times you can do that, family credit of sometimes $900. It's like a dollar for dollar credit against state taxes. And they use these funds as private tuition for individuals to go to like a private school.
Yes.
When the ESA program kind of came along and went universal, my understanding is that you can either have the ESA program or the STO, but not
Correct.
both. And the STOs are limited to only funding what the ESA does. And so you look at those, and ESA is mass available. STOs, you have to apply and be approved by a board, so it's a case-by-case basis. ESA just seems easier. It made me wonder, why does STO even exist if ESA is available, and why don't we allow STO to be a supplement, especially for some of these special needs kiddos, because that's private money already set aside that would be infused back into the education system instead of in place of. So can you give me any thoughts there? Because I've been frustrated with this for a number of years, and I don't know why it's the way that it is.
I'm tired of hearing Nathan whine about this.
Because all the time we will meet, neurodiversity is a broad spectrum, besides just the autism spectrum.
Of course. Oh, yeah.
And funding levels are different across both. And there are a group of kids out there that are neurodiverse, but not necessarily on the spectrum, that would benefit from this approach to education, but financially it's an impasse. Yeah. So I'm looking for ways to go, why can't we unlock this private source of money that's out there that could help infuse vitality into education programs? So help me understand.
So a couple thoughts. One, what you're asking about is what we call, from a public policy perspective, stacking. Can you stack the ESA and the STO on top of each other? And the answer is, in Arizona now, obviously, as we know, you can't. That is something that was a big source of debate when ESAs was coming to be. I think a lot of folks just didn't know how big it would get or would not get. I think now, if, as we know in government, you need to pass it out of the Senate, you need to pass it out of the House, and then the governor has to be willing to sign it. We do not have consensus with all three. I think I know we have 2 out of 3. Depending on what happens this coming election, I do think that ESA, STO coming on top of one another or being stacked, whether it's for everybody or for a subset of individuals, I think is very much on the table, and there's a lot of conversations happening with that. The reason why STO still exists is because whether you're neurodiverse or not, there are schools, especially as you get older, that the ESA amount is just not going to cut it. And so it is easier, and parents that are able to, you're seeking funds for the contribution. The problem with STO, though, is there's a lot of work involved, not just to get set up. So if you've got an income designation, you have access to more money, but otherwise you're literally fundraising, and not everyone is comfortable asking for money. So you're fundraising from people, and it's. I'm just going to admit, as someone who has had, one of my kids has been on STO, and actually we're going to do that for this coming year. Even though it's like a no-brainer, there are some folks that are like, well, I don't know, and you technically have to give the money before you get the money back on your taxes, and so some folks from a cash flow perspective may not have that. Yada yada yada. There's like nuance there, but because we're actually able to recommend children. But a lot of families just don't know enough people to be able to raise the funds. But it would help supplement, if nothing else. And so that's why it still exists, though, because there are families that do have the network. It's something that like they have websites and like they send it out in the way that like people raise money for mission trips and different things. And so, but the program has been affected. The STO, scholarship tuition organizations, no doubt have been affected with the ESA program. But there is a lot of conversations. And to throw another wrench into it, the federal government passed the FSTC, the Federal Scholarship Tax Credit, which is stackable with our ESA program. That has it's a $1,700 contribution, and you could use it for a wide array of things. Unlike the STO here in Arizona, that federal one, you could use it for home education and schooling and different things. That will come online in calendar year 27, but Arizona has not opted in. To get it out of the state Senate without boring you with all of the unnecessary details, there needed to be a provision that said a governor has to opt in. So far, Governor Hobbs has not opted in Arizona, so we will not have access, at least as of now, for that money. But 28 states have already opted in. And amazingly, states that are led by governors of both political parties, which I was very excited to see.
Well, education should reach across party lines, in my
It
opinion.
should. Oh, man, don't get me started on that. We'd need another couple of hours there. Voters believe that.
Sure.
But elected officials often do not, and what I would call special interest groups do not. But it should be absolutely bipartisan, and that's what voters do believe.
So what do you call the federal that federal credit again? It's called
the FSTC, the Federal Scholarship Tax Credit.
What's the pushback on that? Why would a governor not, or why would a state not want that in their?
That is an amazing question. The only conceivable reason is purely for political reasons. Why? When has a state ever, let me ask you this way, when has a state ever refused money from the federal government? The answer is never. No governor is going to do that. This is money from the federal government because it's obviously federal taxes, right? So you have to, and then the state, the state's able to opt in. There's really nothing from the state to function. There's no dollars from the state that's required. So the only reason to not opt in is for political purposes.
Gotcha.
If someone has another thing, please reach out to me, but that's the only one that I could even remotely think of.
Well, we'll leave it at that.
Yeah.
Also, George, before we wrap up, you are running for office. Tell us a little bit about your campaign.
Yeah. I am running for office. I'm running for office in what we call the Northeast Valley. So from Fountain Hills, North Scottsdale, Cave Creek, Carefree, Rio Verde, Anthem, New River. It's the largest by geographic area in Maricopa County, and I think it's the second largest by numbers in terms of total voters in the district. And education is obviously, you can tell from our time together, a big passion. Is something I'm going to work on. Not afraid to get into the gory details, so to speak, and actually be able to do some good fixes, because I firmly believe in the power of what these options can give. Campaign's gone very well. I love connecting with people. I love being out and about. So there's some folks, as we know, that get energy by being alone. That is not me. I get energy by being with people.
We can tell.
So I'll leave an event at like 9:30 at night, and I'll call my wife, and she's definitely not at the same energy level as I am, or getting up, early to do all kinds of events and things like that.
As a closet introvert, I appreciate all you extrovert out there and the energy you bring to the room. So
yeah. So that the campaign's going well, but K-12 education is big focus. I've already told folks. People ask, what committee do you want to serve on? For me, it's a no-brainer. The first one, and I would serve on a couple of them, but I really want to serve on K-12 education committee and be able to work with folks like you all and understand, like, hey, this is what we're facing, or to hear from parents. Going back to our earlier conversation about stories, this is what we're facing. Is there something we can do about it? I mean, and I've already, I feel like I've gotten so into the weeds of policy. I'm reminding myself, like, George, you got to win first. And I'm standing for election in the primary and in the general, but the primary is really the big one in my district, which has been moved up recently, also as another PSA to July 21st. By the way, it's no longer in August; it's now in July for the first time in the history of our state. And but I've already gotten into the policy weeds, and so I'm trying to find that balance. But yeah, campaign's going well. I appreciate you asking.
Well, no, but so if anyone lives in those districts, they can reach out to you.
Yeah.
Interview you, kind of go over your policies and vision, and be happy to, So we'll have that information out on our podcast, so they can reach out to you, ask questions that they might have. As we kind of wrap up, what would be your kind of advice to our parents about ESA? I know we've talked a little bit about it already. Yeah. But kind of final thoughts that you have for our parents.
Yeah, I guess I was going to make a joke earlier. I feel like I speak in call to actions. I don't know if it's like part my marketing brain, part my political brain, part my like soundbite. I do a lot of media interviews. I feel like I speak in call to actions. But I would say, one, be encouraged. As parents, as now, and I've got a 4-month-old, and so I've got a 10-year-old, 8-year-old, and a 4-month-old. So I'm sort of remembering the early days again. As a parent, being a parent, dad or mom, is hard, and so be encouraged that it's all good, and our kids. And I don't know. There's tremendous joy in having children, even in the midst of the difficulty. Be encouraged that you do live in a state that has the best program, I believe, in the country. We're one of the few states that have different funding levels for kiddos with autism. There's other states where they have an ESA and it's amazing, but if you have a diagnosis, you get $8,000 just as much as anyone else gets. And we know with the price that it takes to educate children and the amazing therapies that are provided, that's not going to cut it. We live in a state that has great things, and be encouraged to use your voice. If you've taken anything out from this, is that use your voice and be connected to other families. Don't ever want to feel like you're alone, because that's a very scary place to be. There's already enough calamity in our world. And so I always like to end every conversation that I have, literally about any topic, with some amount of encouragement, because I feel like everybody needs it. I will say, people want hope, people want joy, people want something to aspire to look forward to. And I think we have a tremendous amount of options in the state. I've been in Arizona for 30 years this May. And as someone who comes from another country where life is very difficult and there are not a lot of options of any sort for anything, we live in a great country. We live in a great state. Be encouraged, and please use your voice and use your stories. Our children matter. They're worth it. We all know that, of course. And just also so grateful for the work that you all have done in standing up Polaris, in your desire to do this and your willingness to do this. Because desire is one thing. Willingness, capability, know-how, connectivity, a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, as I see the smiles around the table that have gone into this. And so just grateful for everything that you all have done.
Well, that's like the best way to end a podcast.
Yeah. Amen, and God bless.
Amen. I know. Now go do some good. Well, thank you, George, for being here. Thank you, everybody, for making us part of your day. Please don't forget to subscribe so you never miss a conversation that inspires connection. Want to give a big shout out to our producer, Jesse Palmer, and our marketing director, Dallin Davis. Until next time, let's do some good.